So this panel is about the dangers of overregulation, mostly about California, which some of us who were invited to speak on the panel know something about. But we're such a small, intimate group that we'll just go around and you can introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll talk about, I think, both California and what happened there, or any other dangers of overregulation. We can also, I've been looking at the bill as it's been introduced, and so we can talk about, well, never mind what went wrong somewhere else, what could Hawaii possibly do right, which is a long shot always with the Hawaii State Legislature. But, we have a framework in the bill, and maybe we can get them to put some stuff in there. Anyway, we can go into that in a little more detail. And I guess we should probably aim to wrap up about 1:30 in case there's something else happening here. But if people want to continue talking after, we can figure that out. My name is James Anthony. I was born and raised on this island of Oahu, and my mother's family is from the Big Island. All the way back to time immemorial. I've lived in America off and on for the last 40 years. I'm back in Oakland, and I was a cannabis lawyer and policy activist in California since 2006, so almost 20 years. And some of us in this room worked with the Hawaii Cannabis Hui. Thank you, my dear. Over the last couple of years to kill some bills that were just bad commercialization monopolies for the existing dispensaries, all of whom are not necessarily evil, but collectively their interest is making money, not making good policy. So we're here to talk about good policy. And I will leave it at that, and we'll just go around and, say if you're, I don't know, what you doing here?
Thank you, James. My name is Jason Matthys, and I'm a cannabis policy activist and also a cannabis seed maker. I moved to Oakland, California in 2010 to be part of the medical cannabis industry, and that gave me some unique insights as seeing what happened from Proposition 215 era through legalization in 2016 and its implementation on January 1st, 2018, and the cultural and economic impacts that have resulted from commercialization of the cannabis industry post-legalization. And so really excited to talk with everyone here about ideas on how we can avoid some of the mistakes that have happened in California and other states, and craft good policy, not merely policy crafted by a small group of stakeholders, something that will actually benefit all the people. So thank you.
Aloha, my name is Amy Donzis, and I am involved in a multitude of ways with cannabis in terms of I was the marketing director of one of Hawaii's biggest dispensaries. I really wanted to get in and understand what was happening, and I was hoping, and what I thought I would find was this ability to be able to help the local farmers farm. And what I learned, I think within industries, we all know we're in situations, you end up with a knowledge base that sometimes is very uncomfortable. And then what do you do with that? It's very easy to just kind of go underground and put it away and be like, oh, that's scary to address it. But I think what I saw, I can form it in a way that the community can benefit in terms of some parallels and understandings. And I'll just give you a quick overview of what those are that I've seen. We have 8 license holders in the state, and they can grow, or they have, it's a vertical integration. So you're the lab, you're the grow, you're the retail store, right? So you're a distributor, and you're the only ones that can retail like that. Of those 8 licenses, they can have 5 dispensaries, and they can have 2 grow facilities. And so for me, that looked very parallel to the sugar industry and the way it was used of the 5 sugar barons and the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom. And I was like, oh, this is only going to be controlled by a few people the way it's set up if we keep in this way. These 8 license holders, there was no other way. And so now as you look and we move forward, here we are. We're looking into an adult use market, right? And maybe having also keeping medical. But we're from a supply chain and listening to the state. It's like, how do we come together and find solutions? And to me, there's some kind of common, easy fruit that we can pick from. And it's going to be what I think is, we've got 33,000 card holders for medical cannabis in the state. Of those 8 license holders, that's their patient base. That's their customer base, if you want to call it that. In addition to that, we've got 10 million people that visit our islands annually. And so what we're looking at, let's say 10% of those people end up purchasing and want to consume cannabis. That's 1 million patients. Right now we have 33,000. So the current infrastructure, in my opinion, cannot even sustain, because we're going to be having 33,000 patients versus 1 million, right? So what makes sense for the farmers? What makes sense for the state? Farmers need to farm. Right? And if you listen to the state's goals, what they're saying is that sustainability in agriculture and food sourcing is one of their #1 goals for the state. In order to do that, they must invest in the agricultural infrastructure, and Hawaii cannabis is one of the pathways that we can do that, for regenerative farming, for having additional income, for farmers to be able to live and produce their own medicine. And if they could sell direct to consumer like they would want, just like the dispensaries are doing, we're leveling the playing field. And you hear compliance shaken around a lot. And that compliance is really just following laws, like any industry. And so I think there's just this moment in history to look back, not only of history of Hawaii, but the end of Prohibition. This is a once in 100-year end of Prohibition. It was alcohol was the last one. Here we are now. I work with Ola Brew. That company is sold right next to Anheuser. It's sold next to Heineken, and we're able to sell and distribute. People can come and buy from us at our locations. We've purchased back one of the biggest sugar production facilities in the state, and that is now owned by the local community, including Native Hawaiians, where we're producing organic produce and products that are all produced and grown here in Hawaii from local farmers. So there's already pathways we can copy and paste, and that's why I'm here. So hopefully we can all look back and see that we made a history we can be proud of. So that's why I invest my time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, James.
I was just participating in listening to y'all. Y'all want to hear? Okay, my wife is from here. I come every 2 years. Anna Rose. And we applied. We're in the traditional market in Illinois for the last 21 years, and we applied for a social equity license with some other women, all women group, in Illinois in 2020. And I don't know if you know about that, but it was a hot mess. Made me very angry. I started documenting and wanted to spread the word on what was not working in the industry so that it didn't happen in other states. And also wanted to hear what y'all had to say about that too. Because it's the same shit, different day.
Come and join us. We decided to just sit in a circle, and we're just quickly going around and just introducing ourselves, like what our interest is, and then I thought we could do 2 more circles, one on overregulation in other places, but we don't have to spend a lot of time on what went wrong. But then maybe a little bit of talk about what Hawaii can do right. Not that the legislature is necessarily going to ever listen to anything sensible. But if you want to come sit over here.
Well, actually, I was going to catch the next class, but I kind of wanted to be informed about what was going on.
Okay, so you're going to hide in the back row. Come sit over here. We're all
No narcs. No narcs.
But if people got to come and go, or you're late for class or early, I don't know. But
You're grounded.
we generally we don't like spectators, but you're welcome to come and join the circle. Thank you. We got chairs. You can bring a chair. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, I'm Ed Christensen.
What's your interest in our topic today?
I'm a doctor who gives cards in Hawaii, so I'm interested in the general million.
Doctor, what's your name?
Christensen, Christenson. So I'm interested in the general thrust of the state on what's going on and what's happening.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Andrew Goff. I am an attorney with the state. I'm here in my personal capacity now just to really hear from everybody regarding, I know overregulation in California is something that, is an issue. I would personally like to hear what you think normal regulation would be, right? Not overregulation. So what do you think it should be at? All right, but things that I would have, somebody would have, influence over would be more the regulatory side. So if you're setting what the testing should be, what the packaging, like anything like that, what I always hear that overregulation is costly, and puts smaller businesses out. But I would like to hear what exactly is costly. What costs the most? What's the biggest problems? What are their bottlenecks? I know nobody can. So, but that's great. That's great. That would be helpful. All right. Thank you.
Brent Norris. Let's see, I'm an original founder of Big Island Grown. I wrote the seed to sale inventory management program and transitioned to a patient advocate in 2015. I've been growing for patients since then, and I produce a plant that makes CDBV, which leads into sort of this regulatory compliance and product labeling, where I wish that a parent could go and get CDBV from a dispensary, not just from me, so that they could have a more affordable medicine than having to buy Epidiolex, which is the only FDA-approved CBD product that has CDBV in it. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, as part of our non-audience, we that mic is only picking up on the video camera for the documentation, so we're not being amplified in the room because the thing was kind of distorted. So if you have a hard time here, just come closer and we'll try to speak up, even though we got the mic. Go ahead, Doc.
I'm Dr. Daniel Susat. I'm an MD from here at U Hawaii, and I also have a master in public health. And that's the way I always approached it. Was it shouldn't be illegal. People shouldn't need doctors to certify them. Dr. Christian had you have a very good model, which one of the patients that I brought in there while I was working sort of copied it, the naturopath. You remember that one? But don't worry about it. It's all in the past. We're all working the same goal. But I started making people legal before it was legal to make people legal. And Hawaii passed legal medical 1970 along with Vermont. No, 19, what year are we? Yeah, the Prop 215 was 1996. Hawaii didn't get legal till 2000. But I was making people legal here, like Reverend Roger Christie and the Green 13. There was a bunch of activists on the Big Island at that point, and I wrote them all up a script and a recommendation following the California model, because Prop 15, in order to be legal back then, you just need a doctor's recommendation in writing or verbally. You got a headache, why don't you try pot? That's all it took in California, with compassionate use. But that's a letter I wrote thousands of times without even seeing the patient. Before we even invented telehealth, I just gave them my PDF with my signature and, make your mom legal, make your whole family, make the Laotian temple your whole club. Because it's like, dudes, it shouldn't even be illegal. So I kind of got in trouble in California. I surrendered my license in Hawaii, but I was making people legal right up until the end. I just got a guy off of death row in Indonesia, writing the same letter I've been writing since 1996. He was producing Rick Simpson oil up in Aceh. And they got the letter, and they said, oh, he needs his medicine. So they took execution off the bargaining table. And, it's so corrupt over in the world.
Another example of how medical cannabis can save lives. Good job, Dr. Susan.
Well, thank you. Okay, and that's...
Are we ready? Go ahead.
More airtime.
Hey, I'm Marcus Holcomb. Been growing cannabis for 30 plus years. I've been breeding cannabis for about 25 years. I've also active in multiple states. I've worked through the licensing process in multiple states: Oregon, Oklahoma, Colorado, Mississippi, and other challenging environments. I've seen easy pathways to licenses. I've seen challenging ones, and I think that right now I'm enduring a 15-month wait for a fire marshal to show up to my facility in Oklahoma. We're operational for 3.5 years. We had to shut down, wait for a fire marshal. So I've been 15 months just hemorrhaging money waiting for this. We've never had an infraction. I don't divert to the traditional market because I've got love for my brothers and sisters in the traditional market. I'm not trying to jam up their business. So, I'm pretty specific about, I believe that cannabis should be normalized. We should be treated in a way that makes economic sense, but also compassionate sense. And the source of all the problems we have is bad policy. And the problem is with the bad policy is that we have people that are uneducated and inexperienced writing policy based on fear and not education of how this works. And that translates to excessive expenses and challenging hurdles and barriers to entry due to these policies. So I'm hoping that we can have productive conversations with folks that do drive the legislation and drive the policies. I'm engaged with different legislatures in the U.S., and I'm at a position of, you are the problem, not the market. And so we have to come to a solution for this. And that's really the goal is no one can beat the laws of economics, and they are challenging us with the laws of economics that we can overcome in many situations. And I also feel like, we need diversity. It takes all types of folks to make the world go round. It also takes all sorts of cannabis to create solutions for certain conditions, and we need to be able to explore those without getting the pushback from the regulatory policies that are in play. And so for me, my goal is just to find common ground, explain to them why these policies aren't effective, and then explain to them also that you are supporting dangerous black market situations and or traditional market, however you want to look at it. Traditional market is folks like us. The black market is a weird situation where those people sell fentanyl and coke and meth and everything right next to the weed. And I don't think that the drug market, and that you find that in Mississippi, like you don't buy weed from people like us. If you're buying it not in the traditional market, you go to a gang member because they control the weed. And so the bad policy says you have to put yourself at risk. So for me, it's two things. Economic sense and safe access is the beginning of everything for me. I should be safe. You should be safe. Everyone should be safe to go and buy cannabis. And so the policy creates the unsafe environment because people will circumvent it if it's not convenient, and they'll take the risk. And so if we can remove the risk aspect of acquiring cannabis, which is the safe access piece of this, then all solutions can be built upon that. And really, it's about small groups of people with very special interests that create the problems for the large group of people that are trying to make this happen. We've all experienced this. And so that's, for me, it's about exposing that, but not just for shaming purposes, but for education purposes. Hey, man, I understand you saw it that way, but the reality is it's not the way it is. So let's figure out how to get you to have a broader scope of what's happening so we can create financial model that makes sense for everybody and create safe access. So
Thank you, Marcus. Brother, you're the only one. We have just put your voice in the room. Everybody's kaleo is there. Where we go?
So I guess the topic is thoughts on overregulation.
Well, yeah. So first of all, the thing is the relationship between human beings in this circle. So we have everybody's name. What's your name? What's your thoughts about this thing? And then, yeah, you can kick off the round if you have thoughts about overregulation. Some of these people have suffered it, so we can hear from them, and then we can focus on what do we got? We're down to 25 minutes, but lightning round.
All right, cool.
You go.
So,
you're in transition. Yeah.
My name is Christian. I'm from Compound Genetics in California. So, just hearing a little bit about like some of the challenges, we're kind of working through it right now, like in real time. So I initially like created a a brand, launched a brand back in 2014 with a partner in San Francisco. We did pretty well for the first couple years under the 215 laws, but then as soon as state legalization came, big money came in right after that, and just kind of like made it extremely challenging to operate. So fortunately here, we are today. I was forced into selling the company. I was, in that instance, I was lucky to land with a company that does have roots from the 215 days, and we're still operating to this day and expanding out, to different markets. So, it's a big topic. I don't have, I can definitely willing to share experiences, but mainly just kind of want to see what's happening here, for sure.
Thank you, Christian.
No doubt.
So we are at 1:05. This gives us 25 minutes. I'm going to set us a timer for, 8-10 minutes, just to talk about overregulation. If we want to. If we don't use up all that time, that's fine. But then I do want to zero in a little bit on what we think would be better for Hawaii, and maybe in the framework of the bill, which when we get to that next section, I've looked at the bill for all of, since, 9 o'clock this morning. It's 311 pages. So anyway, and it'll change, but at least it's a context. Overregulation. So I was a city attorney in the city of Oakland doing drug nuisance prosecution until 2006. And after that, I worked in medical cannabis, which was incredibly vague at the state level, which created a very dynamic free market. And then California has 540 local governments, so we made it up, city by city, county by county. And by the time we got to 2017, the year before legalization kicked in, the medical market in California was $3 billion a year, and we could track that because they were paying sales tax. And what happened in 2018, the first year of legalization, is that market, which was now combined medical and adult use, shrunk to $2 billion, right? Which means that the impact of legalization in the state of California was to take $1 billion of legal, so-called regulated visible cannabis activity and shove it underground back into the underground market, right?
I can just say that you went from 60,000 business applications in the new industry down to 9,000.
Right. The number of licenses, the number of retail outlets, everything shrunk, right? Because it could not be, basically the entire thing was illegal. There were suddenly 500 pages of administrative regulations that everybody was out of compliance with, and prices went up immediately. And absolutely medical users, medical patients who have high needs, right, because they're using cannabis daily, couldn't handle the price increase. They all went underground, and they were replaced somewhat, but apparently not entirely, by so-called non-medical or recreational or adult use users who came in out of curiosity. So today, right, fast forward 9 years, California is at $5 billion. Woo-woo, right? Now, everybody acknowledges that the total market is probably more like 10 billion or more. So California has maybe nudged up to almost 50% of cannabis is under control. So that's one of your so-called costs of overregulation, is that there's no regulation, right? It's like basically Prohibition 2.0. So that's something that you want to avoid. And one of the things to look at then is, and you should absolutely talk to this gentleman about the cost of regulation in dollars to businesses, big and small, because it's hard on the small businesses. A lot of the mom and pops are gone. There's big money. There's the medium-sized businesses that are surviving. But then you got the tax bite is ridiculous, so that the above ground market is not able to compete with the underground market, which has, it's a fungible product, right? It's agriculture. And actually what you're doing is you kind of incentivizing these huge grows that produce mediocre cannabis at best, and but that's who can afford compliance and because they're not in the cannabis business anymore. They're in the compliance business. They need consultants and engineers and lawyers and all of this stuff that is not related to actually just growing cannabis. So, and then I'll talk about this more when we shift. Government picks winners and losers, right? By the weight of regulation, by the tax structure, and sometimes really obviously, like how many licenses are available and who are they available to, right? But if you have a so-called, sort of open system with high barriers to entry, then you're incentivizing large, heavily capitalized companies, and you're disincentivizing small local farmers, which I think is really what we want to talk about. But if anybody wants to say anything about, the disasters elsewhere, I thought Oklahoma was doing pretty good for a minute, right? But
Yeah.
we just left it wide open. But we'll come back to it. California.
So California, what you said about the immediate shrink, consolidation of the industry, the folks that were paying sales tax in this free market system, huge number of them couldn't make that barrier. They couldn't make that hurdle, and creating low barriers of entry and regulatory framework that is easy to comply with. You want to maximize compliance. You want to maximize the number of people that are doing the activity's already been happening. It's been happening for 100 years. You want to capture those people into the legal industry. You don't want to create, like what we have currently in this state, is a 8 dispensary monopoly that excludes everyone. And everyone I talk to, none of these people are one of those 8 businesses. These folks that I talk to on the islands are completely disenfranchised by the system, and they have no interest in complying with it. They have no respect for the state because the state hasn't included them in anything. They created something with a bunch of business owners that came in and said, we want to control the whole thing, give it to us, we're the only ones that can do it right. And the state said, okay, we're going to create this vertically integrated system where you do all your own growing, all your own lab testing, you're allowed to have all the dispensaries, nobody else can participate. Creating a system where you just have the regulations that would be in another industry. Like if you wanted to create a wine, I live in Anderson Valley of Mendocino County. It's a well-known wine industry area that there's no limit on the number of tasting rooms. You can open up a tasting room right next to somebody else's tasting room. It's easy to start a vineyard. It's easy to start a bottling plant. All those regulations are already there in your laws. Creating special laws for cannabis that are different from all the other industries is equal to creating exclusionary laws that are more difficult to comply with. So my thought is no limits on licenses, no limits on the number of farms, no special rules. If you're allowed to do agriculture in your zoning, let people to grow cannabis there. There shouldn't be special zoning just for cannabis. That's what we've got in California, where California is refusing to define cannabis as agriculture because that would then allow cannabis to be grown in areas where you could grow grapes. I know people that would have no problem starting another 20-acre grow of grapes, and the same county and the same area, the same zoning, if they tried to do 5,000 square foot of cannabis, the county and the state wouldn't allow them. And so it's not that the county or the state has the reach to actually go into every single hill and mountain out here and stop everyone from doing all the things. They're going to grow it anyway. And then now you've got an enforcement problem where you're going in and trying to enforce against people. And the state just is not going to be able to have the reach to actually go in and make everyone comply. Then you're going to have this, backlog of, cases and all sorts of issues with, fining people, rather than what we had before with the free market in California, where you had a ton of businesses that were paying sales tax that wanted to do things right. And then the minute legalization happened, they were suddenly shut out, and they said, we're not going to stop this. We're just going to go underground. And they kind of lost respect for the system because they were being excluded, and it was unfair, and everybody knew it was unfair. Another thing I touch on is special. Everything's extra for cannabis. They want extra taxes. We want to squeeze every last little dollar out of cannabis so that we can pay for all these special programs and things. It's not going to work. You have to regulate it just like every other industry. Don't have higher taxes on cannabis than on any other product. You just have to create them equal for whatever else you're already doing, whether you're opening up an ice cream store or you're going to open up a wine tasting room, and it just needs to have the exact same taxes. Otherwise, you're just going to encourage non-compliance. The harder that you make it to get into the industry and be compliant, the more underground activity that is completely unregulated you're going to encourage. So that's the gist of what I would recommend to happen in this state is that look at other industries. You mentioned testing. Just look at other industries and have the testing, for any kind of microbial or bacteria or fungal contaminants or other pesticide contaminants. Make it be the same for other food crops. It doesn't have to be extra. It doesn't have to be over the top. With respect to track and trace, we've got a system in California called Metric, METRC. It's that corporation has been heavy here trying to lobby to get Metric going on here. Metric is a complete waste. It's actually electronic waste. Those little blue tags that they give you have RFID chips in them. And do you know, California doesn't even have the readers to read the RFID chips. We literally don't even have an ability to read them. They are electronic waste. They're not supposed to go in the trash, but that's exactly where they're going. I know people that have been saving up truckloads of them because they want to go drop them on the governor's front lawn because we just renewed the contract for $5 million for this company. And it doesn't track or trace anything. There's all kinds of Metric track and trace voodoo that you can do to make things appear in Metric. You can make things disappear in Metric. It does nothing other than give money to a corporation that was able to whisper in the legislator's ear and say, we're going to make sure that these weed people aren't able to do stuff behind your back. And it's all BS. It's not a real track and trace system. Just treat it like there's no track and trace for wine. There's none of that. They need to just come to their senses and stop looking at cannabis people as these bad people that we have to watch really, really closely. Like we had with the free market with medical cannabis, we had, billions of dollars of sales tax being paid. So that we just need to go back to a more free market mindset.
We're at that time on the evils of overregulation and what's gone wrong. I want to just give you a minute to touch on that. From the Oklahoma perspective, which was pretty wide open, at least initially. But Jason makes a couple of good points. One is that track and trace is a farce, right? Metric has somehow conned 30 states into just like heaving insane amounts of money at them for something that is... So that the idea that you can actually track every molecule of THC from seed to sale is absurd. And yet, nevertheless, every once in a while, you get an E. coli break on salad mix, right? In California, right? Or you get what are those ridiculous slugs on the Big Island? Rat lung worm, right, on the salad mix or the mono lettuce or whatever, and they are able to trace that back to the farm and do a recall, right? So if that's what you need, is that existing level of agricultural farm plan tracking from what farm did it come to, where did it go to, what store did you buy it at, so that you can back out for a recall, that's fine. That exists. We can do that. We can do it without Metric.
I proposed an actual
Right.
solution for that when I had to use Washington's model to
Yep.
try and bring in batch processing because the inventory control and management plans weren't given a proper guidelines in the dispensary application. So the only way that you can create safe cannabis free of microbials is through irradiation. The only way that you can track it all the way to the consumer is by spraying it with micronized nanoparticle signatures. Nobody wants any of this.
So But that's just an example of one thing. The other thing that Jason mentioned was testing. And again, we have testing standards for food products at both the state level and the federal level, and there is no need to reinvent the wheel and add these additional burdens to what is just another commodity, another consumable.
And for me, quick one on testing.
We'll give you a minute.
Testing's focus should be about safe access again. It should be about does it have pesticides or does it have dangerous levels of mold? That's really the only question we have here. And testing has been turned into a negotiation tool for brokers and for dispensaries and for legislatures. You know, if it's about safe access, the legislatures and the people that are writing the policy should not be involved in the economics of this. And let me give you an example. As a grower, I can grow a bunch of flower and I can turn it into fresh frozen. Okay? Most every state wants you to test it from your frozen product prior to a transfer to a processor. That is not about safe access. That is about control. And that is about adding more cost to the manufacturing cost of, or cultivation cost, however you like to look at it, of the cannabis product. Testing should be specific to a final product prior to the transition to a consumer. That's when testing should happen. But if you look at the testing models for all the states, it's at every stage. You want to move it anywhere? Give me a test. How much does the test cost? $250. So if I have 5 pounds of weed and I have to spend $250, that's $50. You're immediately at 5% or 10% of what your potential profit was going to be on that pound at a wholesale to in a commercial environment is vaporized by an unneeded test. And so it's little policies like that. And those policies are created because, in my opinion, and I grew up in a very religious area, Southern Baptist, North Texas, and I've been growing fireweed in Texas, not any longer, but because I do it all legally now, since the early 90s. And that was the only thing I did wrong. But the one of the things you have to look at is, you know, what is the motivation? And a lot of times the motivation with over policy based on fear, in my personal opinion, is to satisfy the groups that live in fear of cannabis, the ones that pair it with the same stuff like meth. They think it's the same thing. Oh, that's a dope. You're on the dope. You know, it's like, yeah, you're doper. You know, and that's a thing, you know, and I deal with that. I have a big grow right next to a Southern Baptist church in Oklahoma, and I've engaged with the pastor, and he got all salty with me. And I said, oh, brother. He said, you're not my brother. And I said, I thought we were all brothers and sisters under Christ. And he was like, pow, oh, God, you know, and I shut him down. He came back and apologized. But the point is this. Many of the politicians that craft the policy go to church every single Sunday, and they have to walk into a church and they have to look at all of the people that live in fear of cannabis. If you think for 1 second the policy that they craft and the policy that they pen doesn't accommodate those fears in that Sunday church environment that they show up to every week because they are politicians and they have to do it whether they want to go or not, you're kidding yourself. And so that is one of the things that I would like to see removed. Why are we basing policy on people that have nothing to do with our industry? Where else does that happen? It doesn't happen in the beef industry. It doesn't happen in the grain industry. It doesn't happen in the alcohol industry as much as it does here, but that's where we're living. It's about fear. Alcohol policy was based in fear, and we've seen what that's done. Cannabis policy has always been steeped in fear, and we have to remove that because if we don't, that's where the economic punishment comes from us. We're fighting policy based in fear that isn't built on economical sense. And so that is my goal, is to streamline that. Like, we all want to pay taxes. Create a tax stamp, potentially. Create something else that goes on a final product that's a small fee, like a bottle of liquor or whatever it is, but something different than this all the way there. I don't want any taxes if you just want to get down to it. But you got to give them something, and it makes sense because you have to have infrastructure to make these things happen. So it has to be funded, and we have to pay. And I'm with that as well. sensible though. But there you go.
So you got a. So you definitely have a. I'm sorry. What you got? Something, Brett? Yep.
That relates directly to that.
Well, good, because we got 5 minutes, and then we can all.
Yeah, I'll make this really fast. So I'm allowed to grow 10 plants where I live. 3 of those plants are 12 inches high. 3 of those plants are 3 feet high. 3 of those plants are 5 feet high, right? That's how I'm able to keep medicine going. That's enough work. That's it. I have an LLC I have to manage. I have to pay taxes on my business. I have to manage my business in a way that keeps it afloat, and I give everything away. So any additional regulatory burdens for me, whether it's testing, which is unavailable for me, is absurd. I want to send people to dispensaries. Dispensaries do not label their products with minor cannabinoids that are necessary to stop seizures, for example. You can't find a CBDV product in Hawaii unless you go to the home market. So I just want to say that that's how the chips fall when you have a plant limit of 10, right? 3 are seeds, 12 inches, right? Non-viable, have to be put under lights. 3 are 2 feet, non-viable, have to be kept under lights until we grow those big enough. So what we need in our home market is we need to be able to grow 100 plants so that we can actually produce at different levels and have a consistent supply. And with that, without any regulations whatsoever for 100 plants or less. That's all I'm asking for, is to let us grow. We'll take care of everything else. Tourism, popularity, testing, safety. We'll continue to show there's no harm, all of it. 100 plants or less.
2 very, very brief points. I'm here for Big Island Genetics. Aaron Zeman was one of the Green 13 with Roger Christie of the Hawaii Cannabis Ministry, and his point is we need religious use, no regulation.
That's not the topic of the panel, so we're going to skip.
But that's why
that's between you and God, and the federal government. Good luck. You know, we gotta take it to the Supreme Court. If you can get the Catholics to go with you, that it worked for ayahuasca. I thought that Amy made some good points about the existing monopoly, the 8 dispensaries, inability to scale up and meet the demand of even the local population, let alone the visitor population. So what do we have now? We still have 33,000 patients, whatever, right? And they're effectively now cut off from their caregivers, right? That's pretty much done. And did we see a huge surge in because only a third, not even half of patients ever set foot in a dispensary, and then they got cut off from their caregivers, their legal growers. Did they all suddenly rush into their dispensaries? Was there a huge surge? No, right? There is a robust underground market, and that will continue to persist, and it will continue to serve people. And, maybe visitors won't be able to access that market, but, maybe not. They seem to be doing okay. So you have to kind of think about it, and I thought that Marcus made a good point. If you think of, public safety, and not in terms of cops and law and order, but actual safe access, is the medicine safe? Is the cannabis safe? If you're going to test it at the end point. That makes sense as a frame, as opposed to more testing is safer. No, more testing just means that you raise the price and you support the underground market where there is no testing, which, I don't know. I don't remember hearing about a lot of deaths attributed to cannabis. Oh, none, in the era before any testing whatsoever. So that's a question, but you got a consumable. You want to be able to track it back for a recall, then whatever, some kind of tracking or a farm plan about what was applied to it. There are existing common sense regulations that would work. The problem with the existing bill, and it's 311 pages, have fun with it, HB 1246, is it says lots of nice things, but then it leaves them up to the bureaucracy to come up with the actual implementing regulations, and I was trying to Google you, Andrew. Well, hopefully that's you or somebody sensible like you will be, able to participate in the rulemaking. One of the things that you have to think about is how is social equity or something like a 100-plant limit for home grows, are you going to have a floor beneath which there's basically no regulation? There's a kind of a gesture towards that in this 5-member care collective medical cooperative model, which would be 50 plants under the current numbers. That hardly seems... 200 plants actually seems more reasonable to me. But there should be some floor below which it's tomatoes in the garden.
And it's still 10 plants
Right.
per patient.
Right. Yeah, whatever. 10 plants per patient was a step in the right direction. The other thing is there's this issue about license stacking, right? So there are no limits. Well, there's an interesting limit. There's a limit on the craft provider. So there's this thing now, I don't know if you've looked at this, you guys, Brent guys, where you can have a small farm and you can sell direct farm to consumer, right? So people could be driving around the island and they stop at your farm stand and you could sell directly to them. Those people are forbidden to have any cross ownership in any other type of license, right? The craft cannabis growers and sellers. Why they are singled out to be restrained in that way isn't clear. Because why should, if you're going to have unlimited retail, then why should they be able to monopolize that? So maybe they should consider that all licenses should have zero aggregation, that you cannot own, or at least by type, right? That you can't own multiple farms, because there's this interesting thing now. There's a limit on the size of the farms, Brent. It's 3,500 square feet indoors and 5,000 square feet outdoors, which is, those are actually reasonable limits for small farms that small farmers could grow and actually create lovingly crafted cannabis. But if you allow big corporate growers, plantation-style growers, to aggregate licenses, then those limits are meaningless, right? You're going to end up with 500,000 grows. You got a question about that? Yeah. Here, go ahead.
Again, this isn't legal advice or anything, but the bill actually doesn't. There's an ownership section, so you can't stack too many licenses together.
Okay, I may not have gotten to that.
And
Is
there's
there
a cap
limit
on how many.
Any?
Yeah. Well,
5.
it's 3 in each. I think. I mean, you'd have to
Okay.
reread
Sorry,
this,
can you say that again?
but I think it's 3 in each category, and you can only have 9 total or something. But again, I don't have numbers directly on me.
License stacking 3 in each category?
Yeah, and then the reason the craft
Right.
was written the way it was to prevent larger companies coming in and having ownership in a bunch of smaller craft licenses. So that would
Right,
make
but if
sure.
you're limited to 3. Yeah. Okay. I'll look for that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I might email you, or
Yeah.
we can talk about it a little bit.
No, I'd love to. I mean, it is 300 pages, so
Yeah.
it's hard to it's hard to
Yeah.
see how it all fits together.
You just have to tie the name to the TMK.
a direct-to-consumer component of this.
There is in the current
That's
draft
incredible.
passage.
Yeah.
I really like that because that's something that we do not have in California. We've been, California farmers are required to sell to a distributor that then sells to a dispensary. And the dispensaries are the ones that hold all the power because the farmers have no access to the consumer. They can't represent themselves. The dispensaries dictate the price.
So that was kind of the idea,
Yeah.
is to allow a small. It's kind of like in Napa Valley, or
Yeah.
what you were saying. So like
tasting room.
yeah. I mean, you can come to the farm, see where it's grown, take some home.
step and be right.
So and then also
Sounds good.
smaller grow areas were also. I mean, my understanding was in California they had those in place, and then they took the top off there, and that allowed for bigger companies to come in, and so that was kind of like put that in statute so that they can get a couple of those licenses and string them together and have a bigger thing, but it still is limited total, and then you would have to go to smaller farms to get your input.
We have environmental pressures.
Yeah.
That's enough. Regulatory pressure is it doesn't work. And it was our small family farms that popularized cannabis in Hawaii, and we'll do that again. But the regulatory pressure, we should not be looking at what works in other states. We should be looking at what works in our backyards. Because what's working in other states it's working because it's a push or a pull from another regulation.
So if we're gonna, if you want this stuff on the videotape, you gotta pass that microphone around. We're over time, but thank you for that input, Andrew. It sounds like some thought has gone into it. And you know, this thing, I wish somebody, you know, would write a meaningful synopsis of this bill, because there's some parts of it that are really different, really radical, aren't happening anywhere else, and are a little bit like our backyard. But again, you're going to have to track the bill through the legislature, and then you're going to have to track. I don't think that thing is having any trouble picking me up. And then you're going to have to track it through the agency as the rulemaking happens. But the pieces are there, and if we could get a good overview, you know, we could have some input on what needs to be tightened up.
And if cannabis needs to be tested,
yeah.
I recommend getting more than one testing facility.
Yeah.
We have one now.
What
And,
could go wrong?
and so when I call them, right, and try to get my cannabis tested, they won't talk to me.
Okay, full disclosure, I own 1% of the surviving lab. And it's never paid me a dime, but
Can you
you know,
get
just
them
so
to
you know.
test my
But
weed?
call me and I'll call Dana and say, Brock, quit fucking around, just test the weed, right? That's his job.
Thank you.
We give Dr. Christensen the last word, and then I think we're out.
Yeah, one thing, can I say real quick, I'm sorry, but we're talking about Hawaii-grown cannabis for a second. Hawaii-grown cannabis as a label needs to be protected just like Kona coffee is. What are those provisions? Who's growing it? What does that mean? And can you grow weed and cannabis that you got from Hawaii from a farmer and grow it in California called Hawaii-grown? And it seems that a regulatory agency that can oversee and protect Hawaii's farmers to label it as Hawaii-grown cannabis, because it's gonna also be a global export market. So it deserves to have that credibility and not have the name used in other states and places that aren't technically growing that. So I think that would do a lot for just preserving what is Hawaii-grown cannabis as well.
I didn't see that in the bill.
There's a
Andrew, was that in
labeling,
there?
yeah, there's a Hawaii grown labeling
Okay.
aspect.
Oh, I
to
did
it.
see that, yeah.
But I mean, again, just from my experience with Kona Coffee, too,
Right.
that kind of thing does take time and effort to
Yeah.
figure out,
Yeah.
and to police too.
I have a full proposal for that that includes tour and appellation development, and
all the more,
takes advantage of the Kona coffee belt, which is already
Yeah, that's right. And then seeds and genetics, like that's something that's kind of black hole for me. I know there's IP considerations and things like that, but that is something that I would like to take a look at and talk to you guys if you have information on that, because I don't really know how you protect your genetics.
You can do
It's a loose trademark.
in DNA print.
But DNA print.
At this point, people just take your shit and
Yeah.
either they respect your work or they just rename your work.
Protect it by not giving it out.
Yeah.
Maybe just one last comment, because we have another.
All right, you guys.
So,
Go ahead, Dr. Christensen.
so my comment is that why cannot Costco sell medium quality weed? So you have a large grow. So you're protecting the Hawaii farmers market instead of making it accessible to everybody. If you have it standardized, meet these criteria, you could import weed from anywhere you want and sell it in Costco. Instead of having it has to be grown in.
Costco organic. I just came from Costco. I got my gas.
Yeah, you got your gas there, but you didn't go to your backyard and dig up the oil and process. You didn't process the oil into.
Backyard refinery.
Right. So.
Listen, thank you so much. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. Thanks for working with us.